Well, good afternoon to everybody, and welcome to the Owensboro Board of Commissioners Work Session, May 9, 2017. This time I call on Mr. Terry Naughty, General Manager and CEO of OMU.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right. I'm going to give you a brief overview of what's going on at OMU. First, I want to recognize the OMU board who's here today. Jim Tony Fulkerson is our chairman. Tony Cecil's vice chairman. Ted Lawley is our secretary, and our other two board members, Dr. Tom Maddox and Paul Martin.
Welcome. Thank you for serving.
Okay, we're going to go over some pretty high-level stuff quickly, just in terms of what services OMU provides to the city. Obviously, this coming year, we're budgeting a $6.95, almost $7 million cash dividend. That dividend does increase at 2.5% per year. OMU has always paid the dividend. We hear a lot about our ability not to pay it, but we've always paid it. Under the provisions of our bond covenants, we can only pay it if we have excess funds in the business. We also provide the pilot, the payment in lieu of taxes. This year, estimated at $2.37 million. That includes about $800,000 of electric and water for city buildings. School system make-whole payment of $500,000, and that payment is associated with the transition of city schools and Catholic schools from the old rate to the full retail rate. That's a make-whole payment for the city. Traffic signal lights and maintenance. Most people don't know, but OMU maintains all the traffic signals in Davis County. Street light maintenance, both maintenance cost and a fixed charge, and then the pilot is capped at $3.5 million a year per the bond covenants. All of this is done under the terms of a memorandum of understanding between the city and OMU that was put in place in 2015, and under the terms of that agreement, we are to use best efforts to achieve the transfer, which includes both the dividend and the pilot. With respect to rates, just so we're clear on who does what on rates, electric rates in the electric system, base rates, which is really the recovery of fixed charges, those must be approved by this commission, the City Commission. Energy cost adjustment, what I'm going to talk about, which has created a number of financial heartaches for us, is approved by the Utility Commission, and it's primarily intended to cover variable costs that are non-recurring. The Environmental Control Cost Adjustment, or the ECCA, which is the recovery of mandated environmental programs, that is approved by the Utility Commission, not the City Commission. On the water system, we have two charges: our customer charge and a variable charge. Both of those are approved by the City Commission. And on telecommunications, which includes our fiber business to commercial industrial customers, as well as to our fiber to the home program, those rates are approved by the Utility Commission.
Mr. Naughty, can we
Sure.
ask a question?
Absolutely.
If you go back to that other slide, so the next one, please.
That one?
No.
Right
Thank
here.
you. The energy cost adjustment. Is that something common with all utilities, or is this just a way for you to recover some money that you don't do in charging basic utility rate? And I guess the question would go on to the ECCA, because the average cat like me just looks like, well, they're not making their numbers, so they're going to raise that.
It is a universal rate component in virtually every electric utility around the country.
Okay.
In many jurisdictions, it's referred to as a fuel adjustment clause, and that's to recover the costs of varying cost of fuel. So in OMU's case, fuel is a portion of the ECA. Maintenance costs, which vary from year to year as well, they're not fixed. That's the other component of the ECA, and then the under recovery of revenues from the wholesale market is in the ECA. The ECCA, generally, if you look at an LG&E or a Kayuu or even a Kinergy bill, you'll see an environmental cost adjustment factor in those. It's a pass-through of those environmental costs that we have no control over. We must comply with, and it's just a simple pass-through.
So the ECA just goes into your normal operating budget, or is it kept aside as a restricted fund, or?
ECA, I'll explain,
Okay,
Mayor,
right.
the way the ECA works in a minute, but
Sure.
it is generally an unrestricted fund. Restricted funds are really our bond funds and things that are required by the bond covenants.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we'll talk about the financial performance of the electric system, and this chart goes back through 2010. The red line shows how the net income has been growing. The blue line shows the net income after the city transfer, and as you see, that from 2010 to 2016, the electric system operated very close to break even. At break even, there's no money for capital improvements or required environmental compliance costs without issuing debt. And we do that through the bond market. Operating the business this way requires rates to rise in support of the new debt and increasing operating costs. For fiscal 2017, which we're just about to end, you can see it shows higher net income. However, as with any business, OMU is a cash business. And the green line shows the net change in our cash position. The higher net income in fiscal year 16 and 17 is a cash decrease. The higher net income in 15 and 16, with the cash decrease in the same year, is due to the ECA account. Those are amounts owed to OMU by customers that we've not billed. This ECA balance is an asset on our book, and as such shows up as net income. Now, I'll discuss the ECA a little bit further in a few minutes. It's very confusing, but I'll try to clarify that for you. The water system is much simpler to understand the financials on. Since we don't have an ECA account here, we see that we had positive cash flow from 2010 to 2013, negative cash flow in 2014. Then after a rate increase in 2015 and 16, positive cash flow returned, and net income went up above zero. For fiscal year 18, we anticipate that increasing expenses associated with chemicals, electric, labor, and others will catch up, and we'll have negative cash flow and negative net income in fiscal year 18. However, you will be seeing a rate increase request this fall to address this declining cash situation and to support the upcoming cabin expansion, which I'll speak to. I would talk about some of the challenges. The biggest challenge that we face on the electric system is how to limit rate increases over the next 5 years. These are challenges that are leading OMU to make big changes in the way we generate the power needed to meet our customer demand. We currently have 405 megawatts of generating capacity. We need about 200 megawatts to meet city load, and that's in the peak summer. Consequently, we have about 70% more energy than we need, and we sell this excess into the wholesale market. Prior to 2010, that excess was sold to Kentucky Utilities at a cost plus $4 million a year basis. Since the termination of that contract, we have relied on the wholesale market to recover fixed costs and variable costs for the excess. 60% of the fixed costs are in our rates, 40% are not, and they should be collected from the wholesale market. However, that market has been low, very low, and we've not been able to adequately recover 100% of our fixed and variable costs for that excess energy. Nevertheless, we still have to make our debt payments and cover our fixed costs. And so any shortfall that we have against those fixed and variable costs are deposited into an account known as the Energy Cost Adjustment Account. With regard to our generation business, we operate a very lean ship, and our variable costs of generation are really amongst the industry best. We buy coal for lower than anybody else in Kentucky, and we operate the plant at a lower variable cost than just about anybody else. So operations and efficiency in that operation is not the issue. It's really a matter of what the wholesale market is willing to pay us. Continuing to run the units is cost effective. I get questions all the time, well, if you're losing money in the wholesale market, why not shut down the units? Well, the answer is that every dollar that we collect above variable cost of production is a dollar that goes towards that debt and fixed costs that we don't have to charge to customers. That's why we continue to run the units. That's why it continues to make sense for customers. Our debt, which is around $200 million on the power plant, fully matures in 2026 and 27. In that point, we will lower annual revenue requirements by $26 million a year. And also, when we retire those plants, our non-debt fixed costs, which is maintenance costs and labor costs, drop significantly as well. Our planned retirement of Unit 1 in 2019 will drop $10 million out of the fixed cost equation.
So it's a given that both plants are going to be retired?
Yes, sir. We have notified the appropriate regulatory agencies that our intent to comply with certain environmental requirements is to shut down the plant as a method of compliance. So we have already made that decision. Our board made that decision a couple months ago.
Terry, if I can ask, did the board make the decision to give the notice, or the board has made a decision to close down the plant? Which one of those?
That's the same issue. A little bit technical, but in order to comply with the coal combustion residuals and effluent limitation guidelines that the EPA has promulgated, you must be in compliance by a date certain. We have evaluated the cost of that along with the ongoing fixed cost and variable costs for the plant, and have determined that it's more cost effective for ratepayers to use an alternative source of energy than to continue to plow money back into that facility. $37 million of investment for environmental compliance, another $22 million, $25 million a year in operating and maintenance costs. The cost of natural gas generation or market-based generation over a long period of time makes much more sense for ratepayers, for customers, than to continue to put money into that.
So the clarification is that you've given notice that you no longer intend to burn coal, not that you intend to close down the plant, because there is an option still on the table to convert it to natural gas and keep it open.
Right, but we will be retiring the 2 coal units.
Commissioner Smith-Wright, did you have a question?
Yes. So your board decided to do this. Do you not tell us about it? I mean, were we notified and I missed it?
Well, that's one of the powers that you have delegated to the commission, to the Utility Commission. That is not one of the items that this commission is required to make a judgment on.
When?
Yeah. To follow up then with Commissioner Smith-Wright's comment, so I want to make sure this mainly for the public. So have you totally taken off the table the idea of building some kind of, say, hypothetically natural gas facility to replace Elmer Smith, both those units, or are we looking totally at generating or getting power from another source?
We have not taken it off the table completely. We have evaluated it. The Utility Commission will be asked to make a vote next week on an alternative resource that would be a lower cost resource for energy than the on-site construction of a natural gas plant here in Owensboro. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute.
So you'll address how we know that's a lower cost option?
I won't address that. What I will tell you is that our analysis, which has been reviewed by third parties, engineering firms, has confirmed our conclusion that the off-site generation options are a lower cost to customers over the long term. And I would remind the Commission, our mission is to provide the most reliable energy at the lowest cost. So cost always drives our decisions. Now, speaking of costs, you would ask, one of the questions is, if OMU is a jurisdictional monopoly, why would we be concerned about our competitive position? Well, there's a number of reasons, and this chart shows OMU's relative retail and wholesale or commercial rates and the history of our rate increases back through 2010. Actually, it goes back to 2008. And our competitiveness is eroding, driven primarily by these losses in the wholesale or shortfalls in the wholesale market. So our mission: provide reliable service at the most economical cost. And this is not only residential but commercial and industrial rates as well. Economic development is critical to job creation and tax generation. We must always be aware that the cost of energy is a major factor in location of new plants and businesses, but also in retaining businesses that provide the jobs that tax revenue sources come from. We can't allow our rates to become prohibitively high to new business development, or we risk we risk losing those opportunities, and further, we risk losing existing jobs and existing manufacturing because our rates become too high. In the chart, we see here that the change in rates for 2012, from 2012 to 2017, 2012 being the blue bars on the top, the red bars being 2016. You can see that our rates have increased more as a percentage than our regional competitors, and it's almost entirely driven by the wholesale market revenue shortfalls. We're kind of middle of the pack for residential rates, but we're second from the highest on commercial rates. Steady increases from 2010 to 2017, which is when we entered the wholesale market. So you can see the one red block on the lower graph is when we came to this commission and asked for a reduction in ECA in exchange for an increase in the base rates. That was a net decrease to ratepayers, but we've more than made up for that in rate increases that have happened in the last few years as a result of the wholesale market.
Commissioner Smith-Wright?
Yes. What was the reason for the contract termination from KU?
Commissioner, it was before I was here, but obviously I've done a lot of investigating. That decision was made 5 years prior to the termination of the contract, so there's a 5-year notice. So sometime around 2005, the Utility Commission, and I understand the City Commission as well, voted to terminate that contract. And it was premised upon the fact that wholesale electric prices were expected to be much higher than they are today. And given the facts at hand, it probably was a prudent decision. What has changed is the fact that we can now extract natural gas through horizontal drilling techniques so much more cost effectively than anyone ever thought it would be back in 2005. And that has totally changed the energy landscape in this country and driven costs way down for natural gas while coal costs have gone up. So the wholesale market, which is driven by economic forces being the price of natural gas, that depressed natural gas price is what has resulted in lower wholesale prices in the electric markets. About 40% of the energy that we consume as a nation comes now from natural gas, whereas in 2005 it was probably only about 20%, and it's projected to be as high as 70% by 2023-24. So huge changes in the marketplace since those decisions were made.
Thank you.
Now we'll look a little bit at current electric rates and a projection for the next 10 years. Here we see that revenue requirements will increase in fiscal year 20 and 21, then start to diminish with a significant drop in 2027 when the debt is mature. The projection assumes the retirement of Unit 1 in 2019 and Unit 2 in 2023, and the contracting for natural gas generation in 2022 in conjunction with a market-based supply. Note that we anticipate a base rate increase that will come to this commission and request in 2020 and 21. I want to make it clear that this is just simply a projection. Projections are always wrong, and we have a lot of things that will change between now and when we get to these years. We'll continue to optimize to reduce the need for additional rate revenue. One key parameter is that when Unit 2 retires, We're evaluating that now. We currently anticipate it will be in sometime after June of 2023, but we could retire that unit earlier if it made economic sense, and we're evaluating that now. Yes.
So we're supposed to have faith that we're going to know how to buy natural gas better than we knew how to sell the other product we had at that. That's what worries me about. Are we trading one for the other, and are we? Yeah. What makes the commission feel like we're confident that by changing, we're going to do better in the market by buying the gas? Is that later on in the discussion?
We'll talk a little bit about that, but it's a good question. One of the things that we do before we make any decision like this or make a recommendation to the commission is to thoroughly vet and evaluate what the risks are. And since we've been studying this for over 3 years, we've tracked natural gas prices, and natural gas prices continue to drop. Commissioner Condor can attest to this. Just in the last 4 months, the 10-year projection of natural gas prices have dropped by 25%. There are financial instruments that we can use to fix that cost of natural gas for the volumes that we know we're going to need in order to generate the electricity necessary to sell. So we can effectively fix the price of electricity using natural gas and not have a lot of rate volatility as a result of these financial instruments. We can't do that with coal today, and we certainly can't do that with the unknown things that happen with a 50-year-old coal plant in terms of maintenance costs and emergency repairs and things like that. So the answer to your question, Mayor, is we have a much higher level of certainty about the price of electricity long term as a result of the natural gas market and using that natural gas market to go out and hedge in the forward markets.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I could.
Yes, sir.
Terry, I see Commissioner.
Go ahead, Ed.
Okay. Terry, are you saying that there is a plan in place or a plan that you're working on that will fix your electric costs based on a natural gas production plant with no variables?
There will be some variables. We can't hedge 100% because we don't know 100% with 100% certainty how much electricity we're going to sell to customers because that's a function of weather. But for the part that we know that we're going to sell, yes, we can fix that portion for a very long period of time. The question is, if you do a forward purchase of natural gas at a fixed price, are you certain that you're getting the lowest price? There is a certain probability that prices could go lower. And if we lock it all in at the price today and prices drop 20% more, then that's probably not in the best interest of our ratepayers. So we use a very, very scientific probability modeled method to try to determine exactly what proportion we should hedge and what proportion we should not hedge. And we also set up triggers in our risk management programs for if certain criteria are met, we hedge more or hedge less. So we have a very sophisticated risk management program.
And I think they understand that. I guess one of the big issue here is that it seems to at least what we've read in the public that the issue is not necessarily buying natural gas, but your plan involves in buying measured amounts of electricity through the wholesale market or through Henderson's plant or wherever it might be. But I guess what I'm hearing from you is the only variable that you're considering or that we should be worried about is the price of natural gas, and that you won't have any unknown factors such as any share in the loss of that plant, any maintenance on that plant, any of the things that were variables that were very favorable to OMU in the Kayuu contract that really allowed the city and the city ratepayers and the utility commission and the city commission to have a lot of certainty as that went forward. But the risk was really on Kayuu. Are you saying that those risks are not here with the future of buying electricity versus producing our own electricity?
Yeah. Two things. Number one, the type of contract that we had with Kayuu no longer exists in the marketplace. Counterparties have become sophisticated enough and understand the risks well enough that they will not enter into a contract like that. Contracts that are so one-sided like that, one party either is a big winner or a big loser. And so those contracts no longer exist in the marketplace. With respect to our plans, which we've recommended to the staff has recommended to the Utility Commission, the contract that we would sign for, say, a Henderson project, and by the way, let's make it clear, when we say Henderson, it's not the city of Henderson. It's just a plant in Henderson County that is Henderson, S-U-N, instead of S-O-N.
It's proposed, though, right?
It's a proposed plan.
Proposed plan.
But in that contract, we have defined or reduced our risk, our exposure to performance issues at the plant, availability, all of the financial considerations in terms of fixed costs and variable costs are specified in the contract with certain escalation provisions because, labor costs go up, fuel costs go up, things like go up, material costs. But that risk profile in that contract is significantly better for ratepayers in terms of certainty of rates than if we were to operate a plant ourselves. If we build and operate our plant ourselves, we own all those risks. By contracting with a third party, we have moved much of the risk to the third party. And so, it's a very protracted process that we've been through over the last 3 years to identify all those risks, the pluses and minuses of ownership versus contracting. One of the, and I'm kind of getting off subject here and taking more time, but one of the
hit
things,
this thing, make you start all over?
one of the things that we've also built into this contract, if they approve the contract, is the ability to buy equity in the plant at some point in the future and take the benefit of our low cost of financing through the bond market to buy equity. And so that's a variable that or a component of the contract that we've built in to try to keep costs down. We may never exercise that option, but we built it in. And we'll evaluate that as those dates come up, if we enter into that contract, whether that's in the best interest of the ratepayer or not. We've also structured the deal in a way that OMU and OMU's ratepayers wouldn't directly be issuing bonds for that equity ownership. That would come through the Kentucky Municipal Energy Agency, KYMEA. They would actually own the asset. We'd get the benefit of the low cost of capital, but they would take on all the performance risk and it'd be non-recourse to OMU or the city of Owensboro. So we've built in a lot of optionality in the way we're approaching these to try to minimize risk to ratepayers and try to get away from the risk profile that we're at. Last point I'll make is, I think, Mary, you asked the question, yes, I'm confident that even though we've not done well in the wholesale market, we've not done well because the rates are the prices in the market are so low. When we retire these units, we're going to come from it from the other side. We're going to be buying that low-cost energy in the market rather than trying to sell something that costs more than the market will pay us. And there's lots of opportunities to arbitrage that market for the benefit of ratepayers by buying at very low costs to use to serve our load.
Well, what's the rate today for a kilowatt gas versus coal?
Well,
Is that the
yeah, let me
question?
Today, we produce energy at Elmer Smith for about $28 a megawatt hour. We buy coal for about $2 an MMBTU. The price of gas today, let's just say $3.05 or something, $3.20. At a state-of-the-art combined cycle gas plant, you would produce energy, even though the gas price is higher than coal, by over $1, you'd produce energy for about $22 a megawatt hour. So $6 cheaper than we could produce it with coal. That doesn't take into account the much higher operating costs of a coal unit and the much higher fixed costs associated with a coal unit. So that's why we're seeing these wholesale market prices so low. And that's going to continue. Every day I read about a new coal gas plant being built or being announced. So that's the wave of the future, no question about it.
Thank you.
Jay had a question.
Jay, I'm sorry.
Terry, if
Bellotto?
you guys are going to be considering changing to natural gas, how are you going to be competitive in a market where everyone else is changing as well?
Well, the great thing about natural gas is it's a very liquid market, and there's a lot of price discovery, and everybody gets to compete on a level playing field. So, you know, we would, just as we do today, we would buy those through transparent markets where you know that you're either getting the market price, better than the market price, or worse than the market price. I have no concerns about our ability to transact in that market. We also use partners that are in the markets a lot deeper, have a lot greater reach into the market to help us to ferret out where we can get those lowest prices from.
And on another note, you're talking about this Henderson opportunity. I know it's kind of in the birthing stages, sort of taking off. I'm not sure where it's at as far as where it is and what it's going to be, but in regard to that particular entity, are you also looking at other alternatives and options as far as buying and bringing it to your substations and tying it in with other producers like East Kentucky Power and Kayuu or whoever may be that power producer?
Well, yes, we are. In fact, we just received bids in through the Kentucky Municipal Energy Agency for alternatives to the Henderson with the same technology, and we're evaluating those. We'll have the results of those before we ask our board to make a vote on this. So we always are testing the market to make sure we're getting the lowest price. With regard to the market-based energy, the low-cost energy, the approach that I'm recommending to the Commission is one in which we don't have all our eggs in one basket. Today, all our eggs are in a coal basket called Elmer Smith Station. We need risk diversity. So my recommendation has been to only buy half of what we need to serve our peak load from the gas plant, whether it's Henderson or some other resource, and use the other half to buy this low-cost market energy and to accommodate changes that we know are coming, such as rooftop solar, energy efficiency, distributed generation, all these things that we know that will be coming over the next 20 years. And you know, we make this decision, it's a 20-year decision. So we know these market changes are coming. We don't know how rapidly they're going to come here to Owensboro, but you'd rather be in a position to accommodate those changes in an economical way rather than the position we find ourselves in today, which is one of saying, well, wait a minute, we got too much energy. we don't need any more from solar rooftop installations or, when a large industry puts in its own generation. That just forces fixed costs to be allocated over a smaller population of residents and industries, because as an industry goes away, as sales drop, our fixed costs remain the same, and we have to charge more to the customers that are continuing to buy from us.
If I could, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry, I've got my neck cricked over this.
That's quite all right. That's where all the action is to the right. Terry, some questions concerning Henderson being an option for producing power. When is that notification due to that entity in order to produce the power or be a part of the project?
The critical path timeline is a submission that the project must make for their transmission interconnect in the middle of June
Of this year?
of this year.
You
So,
want to translate that? I know
to-
Larry knows it. But
yeah, to interconnect a power plant into the U.S. transmission grid, there is a very formalized process that has to go, that the applicant must go through. And it takes many years to work through that process. It's to ensure that the reliability of the grid is not adversely impacted, and that all the energy that's produced by the facility can in fact be delivered in a usable manner. And that's the process that will start in June. Now, there have been preliminary studies to evaluate what the cost of that could be, and we've looked at all those studies. In fact, we've done our own to make sure that those costs are not prohibitive and that the facility does in fact stand a chance of actually coming on. The Henderson project is in its infant stage, and it requires companies like OMU, like KYMEA, like other municipals that we've been working with, to create enough of a revenue stream to the project that they can go secure financing. And so we don't know whether or not that project will be built, but we do know it's kind of a chicken and the egg thing. Until somebody steps up and says, yes, I'm willing to buy energy from this facility once it's completed at a certain cost, we'll never know whether that project gets built, because it's being built by an independent power producer.
So, Terry, today's May 9th, mid-June. You're 1 month away.
Right.
So I would assume then that OMU must give notification.
Yes.
A letter of intent or something.
There is a agenda item for our board meeting next week. We'll be asking our commission to make a formal vote on executing the contract.
The contract. The tolling agreement
The
contract?
tolling agreement contract.
And how long is this contract?
It's a 10-year contract.
And the terminology, it's what, I would assume 200 pages long. Is that correct? Been
Probably a
evaluated.
little less than that.
Okay. Been evaluated by all members of the Utility Commission to be okay for this vote that's coming up. So
Correct.
the Utility Commission is full aware of what's in that contract, all definitions and terms,
Yes.
all length, all prices, all definitions of maintenance that Ed Ray had even referred to. Every bit of that is there.
It's all spelled out in the contract.
And has anybody in the Utility Commission actually met these individuals?
They have not presented formally, but my commission has not requested them to meet with them. I'm sure if we asked them, they'd be glad to come and meet with
And
them.
the reason I asked that, you're talking about a minimum 10-year contract here
Yep.
that is very time and money sensitive, that this commission should.
Yeah, but remember,
Meet with this group.
Commissioner, we've been negotiating this contract, and this commission has been kept up to speed on that for over a year. So you're hearing about it, but as you know, in this business, these are not things that are shared in the public. These are proprietary and confidential matters, and we're subject to a non-disclosure agreement we had to sign. What you need to understand is that this is the evaluated low-cost option for the citizens and customers of OMU.
And so that vetting process, the Utility Commission that's appointed by this commission is going through that process to make that vote before mid-June. Fantastic. I applaud your effort. I don't envy your task. Okay, the next part of that equation. In looking at the number of employees that we have at Elmer Smith, 138, if I remember correctly, is that
No,
approximately?
it's 125 in our production department. About 85 of those are dedicated to the power plant.
And making the differential between placing your natural gas plant, if that's the decision we should go to, whether you retrofit Unit 2, decommission 1, or build on your own footprint, that recommendation is how much cheaper, or how much more expensive, I'm sorry, at Elmer
Yeah.
Smith than it is by doing at the Henderson.
The Henderson project, relative to all other gas options we've considered, including the retrofit of Unit 2 and the building of combined cycle there, is 10% less than than all the other options.
And of that
And
10%,
10% of a very large number, so it is a large number.
over per year over the
Over
I
the
assume,
10-year period.
lifetime,
Over
of
the
10 or
10-year
20,
period.
10-year period of time.
Yeah,
At-
it's hundreds of millions of dollars of net present value in savings.
In the organization that you refer to as Kayuu, who are the members?
There are 10 members. You're going to ask me to cite them all?
No, I'm going to ask you who's the 800-pound gorilla in that
It's
organization?
the city of Frankfurt and the city of Madisonville are the two largest participants behind OMU. OMU is the largest.
So on a percentage basis,
We're 34 or 36%. I think Frankfurt's 28%.
and all of those members are on board with whatever type of model that you're willing to use. For example, if you're looking at your variable cost allocations, that would be spread over the 34% or whatever percentage that you take in Kayuu as being representative.
That's all specified in individual agreements between the agency and the members.
Again, I really don't want to see over an extended period of time shifting of cost when a member has a right
Can't
to either
happen.
get
Can't
out or
happen.
do whatever they need to do.
Can't happen.
It becomes very arduous if it's possible.
Yeah, can't happen.
It makes the business model just go through really bad.
No. We have set up the agency in a way that all the liabilities of the agency are allocated to each of the members in accordance with their contribution of load to the total load of the system.
I do find it a little hard to believe, though, that it is a 10% differential. I'd love to see that
You're welcome to
analysis.
come.
I'd
After
love
we
to
make the
sit-
decision, we'll be glad to share those with you.
I
But
could
we
see
are
2%,
subject-
3%, but 10%?
No, it's 10%.
That's
And who did
such
that
a-
analysis?
It was done by an in-house team.
In-house? Okay.
And, our in-house engineers and financial analysts, they're very good.
Good people. Right.
And they have, we've been working on this for 3 years. And it's not something that we're doing lightly. I mean, the decision to not invest to continue the operation of coal at Elmer Smith, that was a very difficult decision we had to make. But at the end of the day, it's the right answer for our ratepayers, our customers.
So, this might sound stupid. Could you not buy from Big Rivers? Are they at capacity? Could they not take
We could, and we have evaluated that, and their costs are higher than gas.
iron gas just because it's coal? Huh?
Yes. Now,
Uh-huh.
they could sell below their costs, but so far they haven't
They
indicated
haven't
willingness
indicated
to
they're
do
willing
that.
to take a loss.
Mayor, may I?
Yes, sir. Wait a minute, Commissioner Smith, right?
She
I
had a
think.
question, right? Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, because I have a doctorate in all this stuff, it just seems.
It's a complicated business. It
Yeah.
really is. And I don't expect people to understand all the depth of this. That's why we spent 3 years, and we've spent a lot of time. You can ask any of my commissioners how much time we've spent on this issue. It's very complicated.
I just, it bothers me that, I know somebody has to step out on faith and say, hey, let's try it and see how it works, whatever. But with so much being involved, it just seems to me that, and this Henderson thing is a new idea, that somebody else would I'd wait and see how it works out with maybe somebody else trying it before I jump in it and not be sure.
And I certainly appreciate that concern, but we've done an excellent job of contracting, and we have minimized the risk such that if the plant does not perform the way it should, we can get out of the contract. If the plant doesn't meet certain milestones during the next 3 years as it's being as this transmission study is being done and as the construction's being done, we have off ramps we can get off very quickly if they don't meet certain things that are absolutely critical to us.
But don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that I feel that you haven't done your due diligence in checking all this stuff out. It's just sounds a little shaky to me.
Yeah.
And Terry, if I might, can I ask a couple of questions?
I can tell you, Commissioner, I've been doing this for over 20 years. Before I came to OMU, I was in the independent power producing business, and I've done dozens of these kinds of contracts. And they are, they're subject to the rule of law. And so you do the best job you can to get the risks on either side of the table and documented. And then if something goes wrong, you got a piece of paper that tells you what the solution is. It's a contract.
And sometimes those pieces of paper aren't quite what we like them to be, and that's why there are cohorts if there weren't disputes.
Doubt.
But
we do
Terry,
the best
a
job we
couple
can.
questions. One, who's your counsel that's representing you in the negotiations for this contract?
Yeah, we actually.
I mean, there is or isn't counsel, right?
Oh, there is.
Yeah, and who are they?
King and Spalding in Houston, Texas.
Is Pat Pace, your board counsel, is not involved?
He has reviewed the contract, is in the process of formalizing his approval or recommendation to the Utility Commission. Pat Pace is counsel for the Utility Commission, so he is their counsel.
Well, that's a little disappointing.
He does not have the
hear
expertise.
That. And the only reason I say that is for knowing Pat and being involved with Pat the entire time I've been here, he's always represented the utility.
Oh, he does.
Not necessarily the board, and I'm seeing the division there that is concerning to me. The second question I have for you is that has any other entity signed a contract with this?
Not yet.
So will OMU be the first?
There are 4 entities that have collectively pooled their resources to develop this contract.
And who are the 4?
Kentucky Municipal Utilities is one, or KYMEA is one. Hoosier Energy is a co-op in Indiana, a very large co-op is another one, and Central Minnesota Power Agency is the 4th.
And I'm assuming that every one of these 4 entities has a deadline of 2 weeks or 3 weeks from now to make a decision. Why is it that OMU needs to be the first?
Just when our board meeting takes place.
Okay. And then also, I'm assuming in that the city owns the utility and these elected officials, this is probably one of the biggest decisions that this community will have been making in many, many years, maybe decades, that you're certainly willing to share that contract under the confidentiality agreement with our elected officials, correct?
Well, you'll need to talk to Mr. Pace about that, because
But the board, but you're willing to,
subject
subject to Pat's agreement, correct?
If the NDA permits it, we would.
You're willing to, provided that your council is okay with that?
If the NDA that our council has approved and agreed to, if that NDA would allow this
Now,
commission,
I'm
we would be
saying,
glad.
I'm saying, if, as long as this commission is agreeable, perhaps you should put us in contact with Henderson then, because the NDA certainly is not going to allow you to share it with anybody else. What we're asking is, I guess, is that provided that Henderson is agreeable, you don't have any problem with the elected officials here seeing that contract, correct?
No, if it were permitted to be shared, sure.
And you'll let them know that you don't have any problem with that?
Yeah.
Let the
Yeah.
Henderson? Okay.
But recognize, Counselor, that
That's before your meeting, by the way. Your board meeting.
only if we can. You understand NDAs are binding. If we violate an NDA, we're subject to enforcement action by the other counterparty.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is we would like OMU's cooperation in speaking with Henderson to sign our own NDA so that we can look at that, and elected officials here could certainly have an option to see that contract since the future of power in Owensboro in this area is certainly at stake. The last time there was a change this significant, it was a failure. And I think that the commissioners have certainly voiced that opinion, and we'd be very interested to see that contract before the board meets in time for them to review the provisions of that contract.
Well, I will put
That's
you
all
in
I had,
touch.
Mayor.
I will put you in touch with the person at Henderson, and you can see if you can negotiate an NDA with them.
And I
And
think-
I'll give consent to providing it,
Sure.
but it's up to you to negotiate that. And I can't tell you how that will go. I can tell you as a counterparty, they're probably reluctant for that information to be out there in the public.
And I'm assuming
But I
that,
also would
I'm assuming
remind
that
you,
the
Counselor,
board, I'm
that-
assuming that the board chair would probably not want to vote on something that's significant until the city commission has had an opportunity to
Yeah,
have
I'm
some
not sure that's a
discussions.
valid assumption. I mean,
Maybe we should hear from the board chair.
This commission appoints commissioners to the utility commission, and then the utility commission runs the utility. And the statute is very clear about the responsibilities and the demarcation of authorities between the city commission and the utility commission.
Oh, I'm well aware.
And I
I've,
don't
I've
have
read
a
all the
problem.
statutes, and I'm certainly well aware of that. I guess what we're asking is, or I'm asking on behalf of our elected officials, is understanding the rule of the law is issue of ownership and cooperation here, and so that the elected officials representing all your ratepayers that have to vote on those rates, especially if something goes wrong, and those rates have to go up significantly, get an opportunity to at least see what it is, the direction we're going before your board votes. But I'll leave it at that.
Thank
you, Mr.
So many
Mayor.
things I'd like to say, Mayor, but I won't.
Well, that's very nice of you. We have a couple other questions. Commissioner?
Yeah, do you want me to go through the rest of this presentation? I've taken up way more time than you had allocated, but I've got a couple other issues that we could talk about. You know, we are a water utility. We're getting ready to spend a bunch of money on.
Oh, just hang on
Building
with
and
that one,
water.
Terry. Just hang on with that. We'll get there
I mean,
too.
you know, this is a pretty big deal, and
Yeah.
even though the commission is on their own, I think there's been one person on this commission that's been put on your commission by this commission. So it does, you know, not that there's anything against any of them on there, but when you say that, you know, they're free and clear because they were appointed by us, they were actually, one person was appointed by this group. So I think that's a little iffy. I mean, I love all of them. I've known them all my life. I'm not worried about it, but, you know, that's a little iffy. I have who's up next? And then we're gonna end this, Bob, Larry, and then I'll say something, and then we're going to move on to your outstanding presentation. Please, Bob.
Okay, so the question I've got for you, Terry, is that you've got to have how many other utilities have to sign on for this to even occur?
That we have specified a certain level in the contract by a certain date.
And the date is the one Larry has,
no, it's a
Commissioner?
different date.
It's a different date. Okay.
Because, you know, we're not the only game in town,
Right.
and obviously to the extent that the developer can get other customers to sign a long-term contract, that bolsters his revenue stream that he can then go to private equity for financing. So the developer is actively marketing to other utilities that we don't have no idea about.
So we don't know who we're going to be sharing the load and the
Now,
utility.
remember, we're just a contract off-taker. We're the developer, Henderson, if we do that deal, would be selling us a certain quantity of energy for a certain period of time. They may be selling energy to other parties as well. The
Well, you mentioned some from out of state, so
Right.
these, you know, it's not just Kentucky.
Right.
So
Right.
here's a question. What happens in terms where they're outside of service territory? What happens with their transmission availability issues? Let's say we had an ice storm. What happens to Owensboro? Where do we fall in line to get things up and running so the city and the community can operate? Because we'd be
Well,
in
we're
line. It
lucky.
wouldn't just be OMU
No.
rushing to get the great service they always provide. It would be of this third party.
Yeah. You know, the transmission grid in the U.S. and the part of the grid that we're in is designed to be resilient enough that those types of event wouldn't impact our ability to deliver energy to our customers. So part of the study process that goes on is to assure that certain contingencies that could occur, like an ice storm, wouldn't adversely impact the transmission or the ability to deliver energy to our customers. If the results of that study showed that infrastructure upgrades were required to the transmission system in order to ensure that, then those infrastructure investments would be made. And the contract deals...
Collectively or just by us?
It would be made by the project company, Henderson. We are only on the hook for a very small portion of those potential costs, and we've defined what those costs would be, and we've evaluated based upon the maximum of our exposure. So we've taken care of that contingency. No one should ever think that the power that we deliver to customers is contingent upon the Elmer Smith Station running, Henderson running, or anything running, because the transmission system is such an integrated national grid that power will be delivered.
Well, but I guess what I'm saying is we are, okay, so I'll subsume this. So what happens to employment at OMU if you enter into this contract? We've got 80 to 90 people that work on the current plant. What happens?
Well, the contract wouldn't start until 2022 at the earliest. And so between now and 2022, as we retire Unit 1 in 2019, we anticipate there'll be a reduction in force. We anticipate that we will be able to absorb that reduction in force through attrition. Once we get to the second unit, then we're probably going to have some separation with employees' layoffs of some sort. However, we are putting in place a retention plan. It's part of our budget that we're asking our board to approve here in the next couple of weeks. That includes incentives to keep employees that are critical to the operation of the power plant in place until the retirement of the second unit. We are still relying on that second unit for power and for the financial impact that it has on our ability to meet our obligations until we shut it down. And so we have to have competent, trained operators at the plant.
Okay, my last question.
We are also, we are also allowing and encouraging, as other positions become available within OMU, for those employees that are at the power plant to be able to interview for those positions elsewhere in the company.
But you'd have a numerical diminishment regardless.
Yeah.
No matter how many
Correct.
alternative options you're going to
Correct.
have reduction. So the question is, can we do this independent of Henderson? Let's say the Henderson project doesn't go at all. You don't get enough support. Where's your plan B? In other words, one of the plan Bs is, I think, being able to buy off the grid, even solar and wind off the grid from other utilities. In other words, you don't have the infrastructure costs, which is the big boon for Henderson. We're sharing in the infrastructure costs. You'd have none with wind and solar if you're buying from other utilities. Have you looked at that? Because I'm kind of hearing from third parties that hadn't really seriously been looked at. But I do know you have a committee, the two guys that came to Tell City with me, that were looking at solar. So tell me about that.
Yeah, our backup plan, to the extent that, and I don't want to mischaracterize it. You know, if somebody asked me what are my odds on Henderson making it today, I would say there's probably a 30% chance that the project gets built, probably a 70% chance that it doesn't get built. So we have to plan for those contingencies, and we have. Obviously, one of those contingencies is market-based power that we can buy. A second option is to build a power plant at Elmer Smith, a gas plant there. A third option that we're evaluating is alternatives to Henderson, same type of a generator located remotely from Owensboro, but that we could enter into a contract with to give us the same risk profile that gives us. There are many options. Under all options that I've recommended to the board, we're leaving about 100 megawatts of our peak demand open to be able to absorb things like wind and solar and things. But we're not going to make that decision until we get to 2022 or until we get to a point where we know when the retirement date is going to be for Unit 2. Cost of solar continues to come down. I don't want to buy today and then look in the rearview mirror 5 years from now and say, geez, I wish I would have waited 5 years. I could have got it for 30% less. That's our approach. So the overall approach that I'm taking is I want to create as many options as I can and as much flexibility as I can with a diverse set of resources.
Well, that's why I'm
Commissioner-
concerned, the focus of natural gas, so.
Commissioner-
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Terry.
Commissioner Condon?
Has Kayuu selected an executive director to run the group?
No, we're getting ready to hire an executive search firm to find that person.
Okay.
They will be on board by the end of the year,
By the end of the year?
by the end of 2017.
Only a comment, not a question. If necessary or if needed, I will be willing to volunteer my time and sign an NDA if necessary and work with, whether it be Ed Ray or anyone else, to help with this decision that is generational and pun intended, to be able to do this for our community. This is extremely important, and I'll be willing to do that. Thank you.
Why can't there be an Owensboro son instead of Henderson's son?
That was my question. Why not Owensboro?
Well,
I mean, just.
yeah,
it's kinda-
there's a history behind the project.
Okay.
The project is on an old green coal mining site. It's an abandoned strip mine site. The project owners included green coal at one time. And 10 years ago, that project was envisioned as a coal gasification project to convert coal to natural gas. Well, because natural gas prices are very low today, I mean, they were $8, $9 a million BTU back when that project was being permitted. Now they're $3. That doesn't make any sense. So that project, which was fully permitted to do coal gasification, has been converted to a gas generation facility. All the permits are in place, and all the siting is in place. So it's a project waiting for someone to buy the output, and that's why it makes sense to do it there.
Thank you very much. There was actually a coal gasification plant planned around here around Kimberly Clark, I believe, out in some area out in there. So that story's been going. Okay, one more. That's it. We got to move on.
I just wanted to say that with things being so evasive, you know, like, well, maybe we can show it to you, maybe we can't. I don't know. We have to ask somebody. It makes me not feel good about it. I mean, to me, anything that's on the up and up, you can take it, look at it, read it, you know, but to have to go through this channel, that channel, whatever, it just.
Right. That's why you got lawyers.
Yeah. Well, you know,
I mean, and as I say, even if you gave it to me to look at, I may not understand it, but it's not so much giving it to me, it's the hesitancy that you could give it to me if I wanted to see it.
And Commissioner Smith-Wright, I understand 100%. And let me assure you that the results of the analysis that is the basis for my recommendation to the board to enter into this contract are all 100% available to you. We presented it in an open session. We have an integrated resource plan that's been developed. It's a 80-page document. We can give that to you. We can give you all the analysis that we've done, that we've made public. So we're not in no way trying to keep any information from the public. At the end of the day, the terms and conditions, so the price that we're paying or proposing to pay the Henderson project, is subject to a non-disclosure agreement. And it's the only way we could get into negotiations with the counterparty was to agree to a non-disclosure agreement.
But when
all
it
the
says,
parties that have been part, the four parties that have been part of this contracting effort, all agreed to the same non-disclosure agreement. So,
but when it says Owensboro Municipal Utilities, that's us. I mean, you too, but that's this commission. When it said, just the fact that it has Owensboro first.
Will this thing be regulated by the PSC? I mean, who?
there is a
who-
PSC siting requirement.
Is there? Okay.
But the rates are not regulated by the PSC. The rates are not regulated by FERC. The rates are whatever you can negotiate between the parties.
So you used the term off-ramp.
Mm-hmm.
So as you lead this discussion, and obviously you got a whole heck of a lot more knowledge than me for sure. Are you going to stick this thing out if it goes sour?
Well, as long as it 3 votes on my board tell
Says-
me
You know
that
what
I
I'm
still
saying?
have
You
a
know,
job,
we're
yes.
we're following a very intelligent man down a path that we're not sure of, and we just. I'm looking for some kind
Yeah.
of smiling commitment that
I'm committed.
you're going to play until the
I am
game's over.
committed to stay and get this transformation done. Absolutely.
Okay.
And I have done everything I can, Mayor, including setting up the Kentucky Municipal Energy Agency in order to assure that these issues are not going to come back and bite you again.
Okay,
That
well-
the mistakes that were made in the past don't happen. Because this is a complicated business. And there are a lot of risks here that we know about, but there's a lot more we don't know about. And you have to have experts in this business to run OMU for you. OMU as a utility is a subscale utility. It's not an LG&E Kayuu that has thousands of megawatts and almost 1 million customers, where they can hire experts like me and have them on staff. That's why we set up the agency, so that the agency can hire those experts. And as a member of the agency, we will always have the ability to go there and get those risks assessed.
Well, I apologize if I put you on the spot, but
No,
you're leading this charge, so I'm ready to go up the hill.
I
with
own it, and I'm willing to live with it.
Okay. Thank you very much for getting off the topic. Do you want to go over the rest of this thing?
I'll go very quickly.
Okay. Is everybody okay moving on?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your patience.
This next graph is, we talked about the ECA, the Energy Cost Adjustment. And to put it in perspective for you about how important it is to OMU and our rates, this graph shows that how the potential outcomes could come. The ECA includes certain fuel costs, maintenance costs, and wholesale revenues. The ECA account was set up to stabilize rates so that small changes in the ECA costs did not automatically result in a change to the rate on a monthly basis. Also, the Commission wanted the ability to keep the ECA rate the same if projections showed that the account would hit 0 every 5 years. And when I say 0, the way the ECA works is we can run $10 million either way, with customers owing us $10 million or us owing customers $10 million without having to adjust rates. Over the last 5 years, the account has gone from $8 million owed by OMU to customers to $10 million owed by customers to OMU. Now that's revenues that we have on our books that we have not billed to customers. It's not part of our rates. We're carrying those costs. The red line here shows that without rate action on the ECA, the balance would approach $40 million owed by customers to OMU. We can't handle $40 million of deferred assets on our books. The blue line shows what we have proposed to the Commission, and you can see it crosses in 2023. So our goal here is to keep that ECA rate as low as we possibly can by weathering these periods where we know we're going to accrue more into it, and then when we start to recover back through the retirement of the coal units, we'll cross back through 0, and we don't have to change the rates.
Sorry, sir.
No.
When you say $10 million owed by the customer, and you lost me on that.
Yeah. The way the rates are set up, if a expense that we incurred could be pushed through the ECA or is eligible for ECA rate treatment, we keep it on our books as a deferred revenue, something that we could collect in the future. So if this Commission decided to increase the ECA, we could take that $10 million owed by customers to OMU and get it down to 0. And we do that, we keep that cushion of plus and minus 10 or 15 million in there in order to not change our rates, because our industrial and commercial customers want rate stability.
Okay.
That's why we set up the ECA.
Okay.
But I want to, just this for the public, this is not to cause World War III here. You've already got an ECA projected. You had a raise. You've got a raise in 2016, and you've got one, if I understood your on board meeting proceedings, you've got one coming up in 2017, the end
Correct.
of this year, right?
Correct.
So you're raising the ECA.
We are.
You've got a schedule to do it. That's
Yeah.
for the public. I'm not.
Yeah, that purple line there, that middle
Yeah.
line, that represents what we've recommended to the board.
So there are increases on the
A half
horizon.
a cent ECA increase coming in June. After that, we're going to try to not have any further ECA increases. There is a base rate increase in our plan in 2020, and that will come before this commission.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Sure. Good question.
I'm going to skip over this one because we've already talked about it. Water treatment facility. As you know, for the past almost 5 years now, we have been concerned about the reliability of our water, our primary water treatment facility. This is our facility out on 144, the old power plant facility and the water plant behind it. It was built in 1907, so the facility is over 100 years. Many of the commissioners here have been on a tour of that facility. We have had significant deterioration of that facility. Most of the equipment there we cannot buy parts for because it's that old. The tanks that are in the ground there are brick tanks. Any type of ground shaking that we would have in this community would likely collapse those tanks and render our ability to provide water moot from that facility. Our other facility, the Cavan plant down by Elmer Smith Station, is a much newer plant, but it is 28 years old now. It has 10 million gallons of capacity. The Plant A facility, the older facility, has 18 million gallons of capacity. The expansion, we've studied this for many, many years, and we've been before this commission asking, I want to say 3 years ago, for the money to rehab that facility, and we were turned down by this commission. And we went back and we did a deeper dive, and we decided that with engineers' help, that it was not cost effective to put any more money into that 100-year-old facility, that the best source, the lowest cost for customers would be to abandon that facility and expand the Cavan facility to a 30 million gallon per day facility, adding 20 million gallons per day. That was considerably less cost than trying to bring this old facility up to today's standards. So we have been working on this. It's a $47 million project. You've already approved $3 million of that in a bond authorization that you gave us 2 years ago. We still have concerns about the stability and viability and reliability of Plan A. We have gained approval with the Kentucky Division of Water for contingency measures in the event that we do have a failure out there, the way that we can continue to provide the water that this community needs and the water districts and the rest of the county needs. And that's been approved by the Division of Water. We're going to invest another almost $2 million in that facility in order to be assured that between now and when the new facility starts up, we'll be able to meet the demands on our system. I'll just say, we can live without electricity, but we cannot live without water. So we must address this issue, and we've been working diligently on it. We have the solution. What's required now is to complete negotiations with the water districts on the allocation of fixed costs associated with that $47 million investment. And after that, we will be in front of you requesting $44 million of bond authority and a likely rate increase, 23 to 25% rate increase for water. It's a 3-year process to build this new facility.
So it's
Now-
it's going to be a new one, not.
It's going to be a great one.
You're going to make water great again? Is that what
We're
you're
gonna
going to
make
do?
water-
No, I mean, you're not
Going to be huge.
huge. You're not going to remodel what you got.
No,
that doesn't excite me.
What?
the real
Going to be huge.
the original facility, the cabin plant, was designed with 4 incremental 10 million gallon
Okay, yeah, that's right. I
additions.
meant-
So it was always in the plan. So as with electric rates, we want to be regionally competitive on our water rates. And here you see that our rates for city customers, we enjoy the lowest rates in the western part of the state. I didn't look at the eastern part of the state, but I'll guarantee you that we're lower than 99% of all the water systems in the eastern part of the state. We're lower than anyone in Indiana or Illinois as well. The average customer pays $17 a month for water in Owensboro. Outside the city, which is the red bar, it's a little higher because we have higher infrastructure costs. That's the fringe areas. People don't realize the bargain they get with water here because our bills, which include electric, water, RWRA, school taxes, sanitation, it just all gets lost. A $17 item in that $130 bill, it gets lost. But it is a bargain here for water.
Terry, if I may,
Yes.
Owensboro outside is 2586.
Yes.
Yet one of the customers of Owensboro is West Davis County and South. How are they lower than what you're charging? What are you doing? Okay, hold on.
Long story, but let's just say when the cabin plant was built, the water districts received a subsidy from OMU customers in order for them to participate in that project.
A subsidy.
And so
that's a
that's-
bad word.
It is, but it just is what it is.
Okay.
It's in a contract that was inked in 1989, I believe.
And you recently signed new contracts, did you not?
We modified the contract in an attempt to address the known costs that we're going to have coming up with this expansion.
And everybody signed the new contracts.
Everybody signed it.
So they cannot go somewhere else to get their water?
They cannot.
Very good, thank you.
So with with let's say a 23% increase, the average rate that an OMU customer will pay will move up to $21.44 a month, and puts us in third place behind Henderson and Hartford. But Henderson is getting ready to do the same thing, and their rates are going to go up. I don't know what Hartford's going to do, but our rates will still be amongst the lowest in the state with a 23% increase. The structure of the rate increase has not been determined at this time. When we come to you asking for bond authority for $44 million, we will also recommend a rate structure, whether that will be a one-time increase, a stepped increase over several years, a deferred rate increase. We will work with this commission and with our board to determine what makes sense for our customers.
So all the people getting our water are going to be paying the same rate. Is that what you're saying?
No, sir.
So the people in the county get a different rate than the people in the city?
There are you have to understand that the county water systems buy wholesale water from OMU. They then take that water and
Okay,
deliver it in their pipes and their tanks, and they have costs besides what we don't control those costs. So what we try to do is we try to recover the fair share of fixed cost expense that they're contributing to our system from each
And
of
that
them.
was what that meeting was at the Briar Patch?
That was part of that meeting.
That was part of that.
That was a good lunch.
That was not exactly.
The discussion got a little heated, but which comes down to the other subject of, are you still on path for 3 trains?
Yes, sir.
Instead of 2?
Yes.
And all of the customers of OMU outside of the city are on board with that?
Yes, sir.
How'd you do that?
Well, we had the Division of Water. We basically gave them a bunch of data that showed that this is not different from other communities. Okay.
It's just curious to see whenever you look at your peak day and then you build that third train and how much angst that created by overbuilding.
Well, our peak
What do you
demand.
want to call?
Our peak demand is about 19 million gallons a day. So with 3 trains, if one of them fails, we can still meet
Still
our
get to
peak day
19.
with 30 million gallons. And that's the level of redundancy you have to have in a water system, because guess what? When you go to turn that tap on, you want water to come out.
Don't want mama mad.
It doesn't care. It doesn't matter what's going on in the OMU system. You still expect water to come out of that tap, and that's the customer expectation that we have to meet. Okay. Finally, the last thing I wanted to talk about is fiber to the home build out. You've been reading a little bit about this. We've been working on a demonstration project for this service for a little over a year. We've gained 22% subscription rate from all the homes and apartments that we pass. Our business case for this endeavor is based upon a target of 20%, and at 20%, the project is cash flow positive in 6 years. Now, $19 million is a lot of money, but there are a lot of reasons why we think this is a prudent investment. Now, our commission has asked us to go back and look at incrementally financing this rather than financing it all up front. And we'll be coming back to them next week with a recommendation as part of our budget to downsize that financing to about $7 million. That'll cover the first 2 years of the expansion. The numbers still work. At 20%, we still get positive cash flow in 6 years. There's no impact on electric rates. This is a self-supporting investment. We've stress tested this business case, and as low as 12%, we can still break even on this business. We believe that this is the future for OMU and for this community. There's a lot of reasons why we should do this project. First, our core purpose is to improve the quality of life for our customers, and clearly giving customers and citizens access to high-speed internet is improving their quality of life. Second, economic development. Employers want young employees who live and work in a place they want to live and work in. High-speed fiber will promote those services and lifestyles that millennials, Gen X, and Gen Y have come to expect. It could help us to lessen the brain drain that we see in Owensboro by having this for every citizen. Third, another core purpose of OMU is to provide a fair return to the city. This business will be a gateway to customers for the city. This and for provision of service via the internet. As a city-owned utility, this allows for new franchise fees that are required in order to access that utility, and more importantly, it's a profitable business, and it enhances OMU's ability to pay the city dividend. In closing, it's a low-risk business that positions OMU for the future. We know that smart homes, smart appliances, the Internet of Things, people, millennials and Gen Xers who want to work from home, they can't do it unless they have great connectivity. And we believe that this is a surefire business that will help to promote those things that we believe are so important to this community. So with that, I've taken way more time.
Oh, it was very informative, Terry. It really was.
But I hope I've answered your questions.
Just one thing on are you going to be landlocked with this deal when you get every house in Owensboro on this stuff? Can you grow from there?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
That's it. Anybody else have anything?
I got a quick question on the internet business. So what impact, if any, will the recent federal decision to get rid of net neutrality play into this? Will that help you, hurt you?
Well, I think we're regardless of what happens on that, whether it's upheld or we go back to net neutrality, it's a level playing field. So as a market, we have to be able to compete in that market, and we will structure our offerings to compete in that market. We do not see the big players investing in this infrastructure in Owensboro. They're going to invest in Evansville, Louisville, Lexington first, and only after they've made those investments will they get to the secondary markets. By that time, we'll have our system built out. And, I don't worry about competing with them. Our service is so good. If you ask any OMU or any AT&T customer, and I don't want to point fingers at AT&T.
Go ahead.
I mean,
Yeah.
you call them and ask them for service, and it takes days, if not weeks, for them to. If you call OMU and you have a service problem, we'll have somebody out there that day. So, our commercial fiber business is growing leaps and bounds. As people's contracts are coming up with the other providers, they're switching over to us because our service is so much better.
Well, look forward to hearing more positive news about it in the future.
I'd invite anybody from the board if you'd like to speak.
I got one.
Mr. Chairman.
Quick question for Terry real quick before he sits down about the fiber. Terry, why fiber? A lot of smaller cities, even larger cities in northern Kentucky, have put this in play, and now they're all going wireless, and they're seeing a big benefit from wireless through their fiber loops that we already have in place in the city. What's the benefit of this?
Well, even if you go to a 5G wireless system, which, we've heard a lot about 5G, it's very data intensive. And ultimately, it has to go to a fiber in order to get onto the internet because the quantities of data that are being transmitted and the speeds that are required, you just can't do it on wireless. So even if 5G comes in and we start to see that permeate throughout the city, they'll be using our fiber to get those signals back to the internet for them to manage.
Is this fiber part of your smart meter project too?
It has an enhancement to that. It's, as you know, it's not necessary.
Right. You went with the mesh network, correct?
We did.
Okay.
And it's not absolutely necessary, but it adds a level of reliability that you can't get without it.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Thanks,
Jerry, would you be able to offer to the average residential customer under this program 10 years at $50?
I don't know the answer to that.
Oh, come on. That would be so cool if you could do that one.
Well, I will say that we do know.
It might affect the dividend. Be quiet, Larry.
I think that's probably
That's
a
why we're
risk
doing
that-
it. Wait, hold up.
That's probably a little more risk than we want to take. But, technology in this area is a threat, and technology improvements is always a threat. And we've done our homework and our due diligence, and even if the technology changes, we believe that it's still going to rely on a fiber backbone for integrating with the internet. Boy, the amount of data that will flow over these lines is just, over the next 30 years, is absolutely incredible. I mean, it's just unbelievable if you look at the level of technology integration in the average home or business. Things that we take for granted today, I'm starting to read about these. You go to the grocery store, you buy a container of orange juice, and it has a chip in it that when the orange juice gets empty, the chip talks to your home network and reorders it from Amazon so it's delivered the next morning. That's the kind of data that's going to permeate society in the next 35, 50 years.
As if you don't have anything bigger on your table, but what could we do in the future to eliminate the dividend? How could we, as a community and OMU, work in order to do that?
Larry.
I'll just leave it at that and let it go.
Do you want an answer?
Mayor, I would just say one thing in response to that.
Bet you say more than one thing.
Let's just all remember that the return on the investment, just so members of the public that may be out there, the return on investment is a statutory provision. It's worked into the statute, and the presentations that have been made in the past for the rates that prior commissions have passed, it was guaranteed by the presentations that these rates would provide that return as it's contemplated in the state statutes, back to the city of Owensboro. So understand your question, Larry. I just didn't want the viewing audience to
Nor did I
not
want
maybe
to you off the
understand.
hook here either. I didn't want that to happen. It's just simply knowing that if we're going to be going to natural gas, potentially, Terry knows we've had some very in-depth discussions about what could be done under certain prepaid natural gas arrangements that afford the fuel discount that could then be basically an interest rate arbitrage, come back then to the city over that extended 30-year period of time that is still paid to the city, but done through an interest rate arbitrage, please.
Yeah, there's all kinds of structured transactions that could be done that way. I mean, I can't speak to, the expenses of the city. All I can speak to is the dividend and the transfer. And, we benchmark this transfer every few years against what other municipalities do. And it is not out of line with what other cities do. Now, there are a lot that have lower dividend as a percent of net revenues. There are very few that have higher. We're at the top end. But the city of Henderson, for example, they're, as a percent of revenue on the electric system, they're right where we are. So it is not out of line with what other municipalities are doing. It does, as I said earlier, it does, as we operate a not-for-profit business and have to pay the dividend, which we agreed with the city that we take best efforts to do that, the fact that we don't have any surplus revenues to reinvest in infrastructure as it ages is problematic, because then the only way that I can get the money to invest in the system to keep the reliability that customers expect is to go borrow money. And when I borrow money, that means if I don't have a old debt that's falling off at the same time, I have to increase rates to cover that new debt. So that's the limitation that it puts on.
Mr. Fulkerson, would you like to take the podium? Please state your name and address for the...
Jim
I'm just
Tony
kidding.
Fulkerson, 1338 Hill Avenue, Owensboro, Kentucky. I'd like to thank y'all for having us down here today, and would appreciate the invitation to come back soon. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, anybody else? Okay. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is the city project list, and I'll turn this over to City Manager Bill Parrish.
Mayor, you have your city project list in front of you. If there are any questions, we'll answer those by exception rather than briefing the entire list.
Blue Bridge Lighting.
I'd ask you to call on Ed Ray, Mayor.
Ray, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. The Blue Bridge lighting is still at the state level for approval, and I know we've got our honorable Senator Bowen here. If anything you could do up there to expedite that, it would be very helpful. But he's already done, I think, on a weekly basis. He's popping in and making sure that that's not being forgotten. But Mayor, it's on our TIF plan. As a partner with the state of Kentucky, to have that as a reimbursable expense once the permit gets completed, and that we certainly can and will continue to check on that at the state level, but that's what we're waiting on at this time.
I guess we should recognize Senator Joe Bowen and House Member Matt Caslin for joining us today, and we appreciate your interest in the city of Owensboro and what we're doing. Thank you. Okay, update on Gabe's Tower, please. Mr. Ray.
Well, thank you, Mayor. On Gabe's Tower, continues to be a public message board if you've not been by there recently.
They had OMU's rates on there last night, didn't they? They had on there?
Flashing in red. No. The tower continues to be in the foreclosure action, and our next motion for summary judgment hearing is scheduled for next Tuesday, and I'll be able to better update the commission once the judge makes a ruling on that motion for summary judgment as to what direction we're going. At this point in time, still have the authority is granted by the commission to file the condemnation action, but in the interest of saving those funds, if not necessary, we'll see how the judge rules on Tuesday.
Okay, thank you. International Bluegrass Music Center. Mr. Ray,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Again, the center is going great. We're just commenting here today about some of the aerial photographs that were sent in by the construction team. It's amazing what you can get out of a drone nowadays versus getting an aircraft in the air and the high-speed footage you need for that. We continue our time-lapse photography of the progress. And matter of fact, they're going to be doing a concrete pour this Saturday, and in the interest of keeping on schedule, and thanks to Ted Lawley and Danco, they've worked through maneuvering around Barbecue Festival, which is this weekend, to be able to make that happen on Saturday morning is the goal. So I'm very satisfied with the progress that's been made. I'm very satisfied with the state of the site. If you haven't been by there, I think the Alorica building and the Bluegrass Museum are two of the nicest construction sites, and the Enclave too down in that area. They're really taking those extra precautions to make sure that the city's pavers and the streets and the sidewalk improvements they've done are kept without damage. So that's where we are currently with the Bluegrass Museum. Still looking at substantial completion December 31st, 2017.
That's all I have on the project list. Anybody else have any questions?
No, sir.
Hearing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying
Aye.
all opposed. Adjourn. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate you.